Hey everybody, listen up. I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the Engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay, every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Arts Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.
You're listening to the Sportsman's Nation Podcast Network, powered by Interstate Batteries. From your truck to your trail camera, Interstate Batteries has you covered. Visit your local Interstate Battery store today or online at interstatebatteries.com. Interstate Batteries, outrageously dependable.
My name is Clay Newcomb, and I'm the host of the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. I'll also be your host into the world of hunting the icon of North American wilderness, the bear. We'll talk about tactics, gear, conservation, but we'll also bring you into some of the wildest country on the planet, chasing bear. Hey guys, we've got a fantastic episode of the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. You're going to enjoy this one with my good friend Bernie Behringer, where we're going to talk about the Color Phase Grand Slam of Bears, which is something that Bernie coined several years ago, and he's completed it. We're going to talk about kind of the biology behind color phase bears, where they're at, why they're color phase, and we're going to talk about the slam. So this is going to be a really nitty-gritty bear episode. I also want to say that the March-April issue of Bear Hunting Magazine is out to subscribers right now. Hey man, we have a stinking amazing magazine. We really do. Bear Hunting Magazine is in its 20th year in print. And we have columns, we have articles, we have how-to stuff, we have adventure stories that cover the full gamut of this extremely diverse critter that we all love to hunt and love to interact with and are just thrilled that lives on this continent. We do spot and stalk stuff out west. We do hound hunting stuff. We do bait hunting stuff. We try to cover the full spectrum of bear hunting in North America. Bears live in such diverse places. They're such an adaptable species that the different geographic regions that they live call for different, very unique types of hunting. And that's the reason there's such a broad opportunity for bear hunting. And that's why that there's so many different methods. And Bear Hunting Magazine, what we want to do is unite bear hunters across North America and also create new bear hunters. And we believe that bears are an iconic North American big game species that is iconic of North American wilderness. The great patriarchs of our hunting heritage here on this continent identified themselves as bear hunters. We're rebranding bear hunting, and we are doing it in great fashion inside of Bear Hunting Magazine. You can do me a favor by checking out a subscription at bear-hunting.com. Something that's been on my mind lately is a phrase that I've used in print a few times, and that is what I call passionate authenticity. As we live inside of the modern times and in 2019, it is a difficult thing on the political spectrum to be a bear hunter. And whether you realize it or not, bear hunting, our traditions, our way of life, our way of scientifically managing big game, predator species is under attack. I believe that more than anything, what we can do as individuals inside the hunting community is build this thing that I would call and describe inside of my life as passionate authenticity. And that authenticity comes by us truly understanding the dynamics of scientific wildlife management, understanding our culture, but more importantly, it goes back to an old principle of clean the inside of the cup first, and then the outside will be made clean. Basically what I'm saying is that we can't preach, we can't say that we are wildlife managers and we respect wildlife and we're involved in conservation, and we can't like proclaim this powerful message of the North American model of wildlife conservation if behind closed doors and when no one's watching, we are not what we say that we are. And to me, that goes right down even into the utilization of wildlife-related resources. Like, if we say that we're bear hunters and that we eat bear meat, then we really need to the best of our ability, utilize bear meat, utilize the wildlife-related commodities that we have. If we talk about getting our way of life into the next generation, that can't just be something we tag on Instagram, but like we've actually got to make sacrifices towards doing that. This whole idea that we can't proclaim one thing and be another. I believe that the earth does recognize, I don't care who you are, what nationality you are, people recognize when something and some person is authentic. Because there's power behind our declaration when we are authentic. There's power behind our life when we are authentic. As hunters, I think we need to graft that deep inside of our philosophy of life and living, is that we have to be who we say we are. And that's something that in 2019 I'm focusing on inside of my life, is I'm cleaning up the rough edges of where my proclamation doesn't fit my lifestyle. Hey, switching gears, we're going to jump right into the episode. Check out Bear Hunting Magazine, and also check out our new destined to be a classic mule riding bear hunter t-shirt. If this does not fit into your fashion motif, then you're in the wrong fashion motif. This shirt is classy and destined to make bear hunters look and feel and be like the gritty, conservation-based lifestyle that we all promote. That was bad. Check out the shirt. I think you'll like it. Welcome to the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. I've got with me a good friend of mine, Bernie Behringer. I'm going to give Bernie an introduction, and then I'm going to let him give his own introduction, and then we're going to talk about the Color Phase Grand Slam of bears. Bernie pretty much developed this concept of a Color Phase Grand Slam. And so he's going to talk about that. But before we do that, I want to introduce him. Bernie is you were a former editor, managing editor of Bear Hunting Magazine. Right. You're a freelance writer. Right. You're a full-time freelance writer.
Right.
So you've written you do whitetail stuff. You do everything.
Yeah, I've written over 1,500 magazine articles, and
right.
Mostly print over the years. But I've had to adapt, adapt or starve, so now I have a YouTube channel, and I do quite a bit of online writing too.
Yeah. And Bernie also has a weekly web blast.
Yep, it's
e-blast.
a news blast called Bucks, Bulls, and Bears.
And if you should subscribe to that. I was trying to describe to Colby what Bucks, Bulls, and Bears was, and it's kind of like a conglomeration of everything cool that's going on the internet around hunting. So you might have a YouTube video, you might have a funny meme, you might have links to articles from different places, and it's just a fun e-blast.
Yeah, it's really popular.
It's not trying to sell products.
I'm really not trying to sell anything, and it's free. Anybody that subscribes, they can just go to bucksbullsbears.com and subscribe. If you get tired of me sending an email every week, just unsubscribe. It's that easy. And it's just what I do is I just kind of peruse the internet looking for really good stuff that I think my readers would like to see, and I just funnel it to the readers. And like you said, it's videos, stories, a little bit of humor.
So you can kind of stay up with what's going on at least in the entertainment kind of viral side of internet stuff by watching that weekly web blast. I really like it. And this is what I was going to say about the introduction, though. A guy like Bernie, he's an entrepreneur and he's a scrapper. It's a big commitment and a sacrifice to scratch a living out of the outdoor industry, and you've done it for a long time.
30 years, yeah.
And everybody, sees people in the outdoor industry and they're like, oh man, you're living the dream. Look at you, you get to hunt, you get to write. Man, it's a lot of work. People don't understand the other side of it, which is you still got to pay your bills, you got to provide for your family. And so that I respect you for that, Bernie. You're a scrapper, man. You keep coming up with new stuff. You're always looking for some new avenue or venue into the media world. And then you've always done a great job with bear hunting. And you're an author too. You're not just a magazine writer. You've authored how many books?
18 books.
18 books.
Yeah.
And so Bernie has a really good way of, he's really analytical, and you're able to communicate and break down stuff. And the book that we sell a bunch of yours is the Bear Baiter's Manual.
Right.
And it's the most comprehensive book that there is about baiting bears. You took the time to just road map all these different things. And so anyway, that's the way I describe you, as a scrapper, and you love hunting. It's all fueled from the passion that you have for hunting.
Yeah, and it's all a flight from ever having a real job. That's
what we're all trying to do.
It's like you just do everything you can to keep from getting a real job, I guess. But but it is work, and I wouldn't have it any other way though. And people do sometimes look at me and say, one guy the other day, he says, "What do you do when you're? You just hunt all the time?" I said, "No, I have to fish some too, And but they don't see the hours and hours that I sit in front of the computer, particularly during the winter, and writing and compiling information and researching and all that it takes to pull this off. But like I said, I wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah, well. It's a lot of work, and you're from Brainerd, Minnesota,
right?
Or that's where you live now.
Yeah.
Were you originally from Brainerd?
Iowa? From Iowa.
Okay.
Yeah. Moved to Minnesota in 2001.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so you had some awesome trail camera videos of that denned bear. Wasn't that pretty close to your house?
It was just a couple miles from my house, and interestingly, it was a buddy of mine who was out snaring fox, and he said, "Hey, I was out snaring fox in the snow. I saw this bear track in the snow, so I just followed it, and I went to a den. I looked down the den, and it's in there.
Incredible.
And I'm like, where's that at? I got to go see this. And so I went out there and looked at it, and I'm like, I have to put a trail camera on this. So I ended up putting 2 trail cameras on it, set it on video, and it was really surprising. You think a bear, it gets nice in the spring, he just walks out of the den and leaves.
Yes.
Well, this bear, over the course of about 6 weeks, when there would be a nice day, he would come out and lay in front of the hole, and he'd scratch and lay there and, just stretch a little bit. And he kind of looked drunk when he was standing in front of the den. He's wobbly-legged. Then he'd go back in the den. Maybe another week he'd come out for a day or so again. So it was from the time that he first came out of the den, the end of February, the first time, until he left the den for good. It was about 6 weeks. And I had about 300 covert trail camera videos of this bear, and I compiled them into a YouTube video. It's got about 500,000 views.
Yeah, that was really incredible footage.
Yeah.
Not to go down too many rabbit trails, but the other thing that got you going on YouTube too was your moose video.
Yeah.
Tell me about that.
I was on a bear hunt in British Columbia, and it was a spot and stalk bear hunt, and we were going down this logging road and heading back to camp for dinner. And we come around a corner, and here is this cow moose with 2 newborn calves standing right in the middle of the road. And my outfitter, he says, there must be a grizzly or some wolves around here or something like that, because she wouldn't get off the road. So we just backed up and backed around the corner. We sat there for 10 minutes, knowing that people at camp are waiting supper for us, but we just didn't know what to do because she's standing right in the middle of the road. So then we come around the corner again, and she's still walking down the road with those calves. So he's like, I'm going to see if I can try to get by her. And I'm videoing this,
Yeah,
so he tries to go by on one side, and she turns around and just like bluff charges us.
Yeah.
So we stopped and we wait a little longer, and then she gets up a little farther, and she's kind of off to the other side. And he goes, I think I'm going to try to get by her again. So this time she turns around and rams us.
Yeah.
I mean, she rammed us 3 times. And finally, he had enough room, and he hit the gas, and then she just chased us like a dog chasing a car for about a quarter mile down the road.
Yeah.
And I'm like, and that video has probably 1.5 million views on YouTube. It's
How long
really
did that? Was it like maybe like a 3-minute?
The video is about 3 minutes, but the whole deal was probably 20 minutes.
Okay.
You know.
It was just it was kind of incredible footage because you couldn't figure out why she wouldn't get out of the road.
Yeah, and he became convinced that there was some kind of predator that was nearby, and that's why she wouldn't lead those newborn calves into the bush.
Wow.
So
Well, that's just an example of how guys like us that are creating outdoor content just utilize anything and everything we can, and that's what I've seen you do over the years. It's just like the trail camera photos with the bear in the den. I mean, that's really unique footage. And then that moose deal was cool. But you also have a ton of other just like how-to.
Yeah, there's
like
about
real
150 videos on there. A
videos.
lot of it's bear hunting stuff. A lot of it's bear hunts. Some pretty fascinating hunts on there.
Yeah.
It's fun to do, and it's just another way. It's just another small income stream. Another way to keep from getting a real job.
Well, you've always been a whitetail hunter. I mean, you've hunted a lot of big game, but you've always loved bears, focused on bears at some level. And I mean, you're a veteran bear hunter. So that's why you're one of the columnists in our magazine. But so what we primarily wanted to talk about with this is just this last spring.
Right.
Bernie completed the Color Phase Grand Slam of bears. Maybe before we talk about the Color Phase Grand Slam, let's talk about Color Phase bears.
Okay.
So for people who maybe are from the south or from the east part of the country, they've seen black bears that are not black, but maybe they've not known the full story. So, there are 3 species of bear in North America: black bear, Ursus americanus, grizzly bear, or the brown bear. Well, technically, it's a subspecies, but the brown bear and grizzly bear, I don't remember the scientific names of those, and then polar bear. And the coastal brown bear is a bear that lives along the coast of Alaska. The grizzly would be considered an interior black bear. But black bears have color phases, which means you can have a black bear that's not black.
Right.
And so talk to me about color phase bears and where they're at.
Yeah, the interesting thing is there's lots of scientific theories on why all black bears are not black, but nobody really knows for sure.
Yeah.
The interesting thing is also that 99% probably of black bears that are black are east of the Mississippi River. So almost all of the color phase bears, like you get up into northwestern Minnesota, you start seeing some chocolates. Western Ontario, there's a few chocolates. If you draw a line basically along the Mississippi River, then, in Arkansas and Oklahoma, you got a few chocolates, but, I don't know if you ever see a cinnamon down there. Maybe once, extremely rare. But the farther you go west, the more common, especially in the mountains. If you go in the Rocky Mountains, there's areas where 60% of the bears are not black.
For instance, Colorado.
Right.
I think I've heard higher percentages of that. Colorado bears, I want to say 80% of Colorado
there's probably
bears
pockets where
aren't black.
Well, interestingly, because they're mostly in the mountains, one of the scientific theories is that these bears have adapted because they're in the sun a lot more, and so black is not the best color for them.
So open canopy translates into biologic advantage, and so they're over the course of eons. They've adapted to have a lighter color.
That's one of the theories, but there's quite a bit of incidental evidence, I guess you would say, that can't be true either, because if you go to parts of Manitoba and Saskatchewan and Alberta that are thick forested areas, they got color phase bears. So, Nobody really knows why for sure, but that's where they're found. There's, I hunted color-phased bears a lot in the western part of Manitoba, and the Duck Mountains and Riding Mountains are pockets of good color-phased bears with quite a few blondes, chocolates, and cinnamons. And cinnamons are basically a red tint to the chocolate, kind of.
Hey, before you get into that, because that's exactly where I want to go, I just want to re-emphasize that in the eastern United States, there are basically, let's just say for all practical purposes, 0 color-phased bears.
Right.
Like if you were in North Carolina, I mean, there might be the odd bear that kind of had a tinge of chocolate or something. But, I mean, you could pretty much say there are no color-phased bears in the Appalachian Mountains.
Right.
There'll be an albino bear. I've seen where they've killed an albino white bear in Pennsylvania. But so the further west you get, because it goes from 0% color-phased bears, all bears are black. The further you get west, you get into Arkansas, and we have about our biologists say that we've got 20% color-phased bears in Arkansas,
right.
which I haven't seen that 100%, but I do know about every bait that I put out, I'll have a color-phased bear, and they're usually kind of a dark chocolate.
Right.
But you'll get the odd bear that's lighter. Now I've got some trail camera pictures from Arkansas of a bear that's darn near blonde. It wouldn't be blonde. It would probably be a cinnamon.
Yeah.
But only in the summer. By the time we were hunting that bear, he would probably darken up some. And then, so the western United States and western Canada is where color-phased bears are. But I just wanted to reiterate how clear it is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like the black bears are here, and there's still black bears in these other places, but there's also usually 10 to 30% color phase in many regions.
Yeah, a lot of outfitters will say they have 30 to 40% color phase bears. That some of them, it's pretty optimistic for some of them, but
Yeah.
Having hunted all over Canada, I got a pretty good idea where the best spots are, and
Yeah.
That's why I kept going back to the Duck Mountains, because 2 reasons. Number one, I had an outfitter, Tom Ainsworth with Grandview Outfitting, who understood my passion to try to shoot all 4 color phase bears. So he was trying to work with me. He was putting cameras out, trying to find a blonde bear for me. So that was one of the things. Plus, he's in an area that has the blonde bears, and so that's the Duck Mountains. And then, you get back to the far west. If you look at the coast of British Columbia and Alaska,
They don't have
color phase bears.
Yep.
Now there's a Kermode bear and a glacier bear that has kind of a grayish blue tint to it. That's
The glacier bear has the gray. It looks like a blue tick hound.
It does, yeah.
It's kind of a frosty gray, silver. It's a spectacular bear.
Yeah, but for all practical purposes, there are basically 4. I guess I'm the one that sat down and said, if we're going to have a Grand Slam, there needs to be 4.
Right.
So the Grand Slam is
So tell me the colors, just one by
black,
one.
chocolate, cinnamon, and blonde.
Black, chocolate,
Yeah,
cinnamon,
and
blonde.
if you look at, there's bears that vary some, and some are a little lighter on the back, and they have darker legs or whatever.
Right.
But if you look at every bear, you can pretty much say that would go in this category, that would go in this category, and things like that. So it works out well that way.
Yeah. So, and that would be something that you talk about with the color phases, that like not all, there's all these variations in between all those colors, but usually you'd look at a bear and say, that one's blonde, that one's chocolate. You're able to decide what it is. And so everybody has heard about the Grand Slam of wild sheep. They've heard about, there's a Grand Slam for the turkeys, or what do they call it for turkeys? They call it a Grand Slam.
Yeah, they call it a Grand Slam.
And then there's now a whitetail slam that they were promoting a few years ago, and so any time that there's it was just kind of a neat deal to just think about, because here's the truth is that in bear hunting, color phase bears are the top of the heap. That's what people want to take.
Yeah.
I mean, that's anything that's different inside a species of animal that would just be something unique, all of a sudden becomes something desirable. And so bears, what's so unique about bears too, a lot of people don't realize, that's one of the broadest variations of any big game animal that we hunt.
Sure.
Like if you think about it from that perspective, like a moose, there's different characteristics for their antlers, but all moose look like moose. All whitetails, and that's probably the worst example, but I mean, a whitetail looks like a whitetail, except his horns are different. But point being, that the bear that you killed this year in Saskatchewan, I mean, just like a bleach blonde bear, and we're going to get into the whole story of that one. Doesn't even look like the same species of animal. And to me, that's what's so unique, is it's such a broad spectrum of what you would call phenotype, which phenotype would be the external representation of genes. You know, there's well, that's what you call it, the external part of an animal that represents what he is. And so it's like a broad spectrum. And so that's what makes it fun. So everybody wants to kill a color-faced bear.
Everybody wants to kill a color-faced bear. If you talk to people who bear hunt quite a bit, usually it's the second most sought-after animal other than whitetail. I guess the best way to put it is for people who people mostly start hunting deer. That's how they're big game animal.
It's the most available big game animal in North America.
The second, when people go for a second animal, it's the black bear. That's the number one second big game animal that people go for.
Because they are one of the most widely distributed big game animals in North America.
Right.
I mean,
and if you're looking for a little bit more adrenaline, why not go try to shoot something that can kill you?
Yeah.
You know, they're probably not going to, but they could, and that makes a difference. Yeah. And what I say, people say, what is it about bear hunting that's so fascinating? I said, here's one of the things. If you're deer hunting, you might see a deer coming across the field, or you might hear him coming through the leaves, crunch, 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 or something like that, and you see them from a distance, and you know they're coming. But most bear hunting is done in thick cover, and bears are silent, and all of a sudden, poof, there's a bear, and he's right there in front of you, he's a predator. He could mess you up if he wanted. He probably won't, but the whole adrenaline value of bear hunting is so much greater than deer hunting for that reason.
Yeah, it's a whole different experience. You know, people that have never bear hunted need to try it, because it's a whole different experience hunting a large predator, and you're also hunting an animal from a challenge perspective that's different. Because if you think about it, most parts of North America where we're deer hunting have deer populations that are upwards of 20 to 30 deer per square mile and up. Even. I mean, so you're hunting an animal that there's a lot of, so you're seeing a lot of these animals. A high population of bears is like one bear per square mile.
Yeah.
So when you think about it from a challenge standpoint, you're really hunting a predator that has lower densities than ungulates, and it can be a real challenge. Especially now, we hunt over bait a lot, and when we're hunting over bait, we're trying to be selective. We're trying to target a certain type of animal, whether it be color phase or an older mature male, and so we are seeing a lot of animals, but spot and stalk stuff, I mean, it's a super challenge to bear hunt.
And another thing that relates to that is the fact that the bears don't live in the suburbs, really.
Right.
Like, you know, you have to go to places where bears live, and that's part of the fun. That's, you know, you got to go to the wild places.
That's right.
So.
Yep. I love to say it, and I say it all the time, is that bears are iconic of North American wilderness. Yeah. I mean, they're an indicator species. Where you have bears, you have an ecosystem that's in fairly good order and in fairly natural order, because they're at the top of the food chain. And if that top animal is thriving, it means that everything else beneath it is going good, you know. So it's an indicator animal, but there's all kind of really unique things about bear hunting. But so, and the color face thing is one of them. So tell me about just give us a little story about how you started the Color Phase Grand Slam, and then you can walk us through the different. Well, specifically the last one, because that was kind of the story. That was the main story. Yeah.
Well, it actually happened at an archery trade show here about 8 years ago, where the former owner before you bought it, Jeff Folsom, and I were here at the show, and we rode down from Minnesota together, and on the way home, you know, we were talking about ways, how can we grow the sport of bear hunting? What can we get? What would bear hunters be enthusiastic about? And I said, we need a Grand Slam, you know, like the sheep or something like that. So we talked a little bit about, you know, a polar bear, a brown bear, a black bear, and a grizzly. And it's like, you know, it'd probably cost you $60,000 to go hunt those four. That's out of reach for most people. But then I got to thinking about 4 different color phases of black bears. I said, what if we did a black bear grand slam for all 4 color phases? And the minute it came out of my mouth, I knew I had to be the one.
Like, this is a good idea.
Yeah. And Jeff says, well, I do know a couple people have done it with a gun. I said, do you know of anybody that's ever done it with a bow? And he says, I really don't. That doesn't mean it. There's no record-keeping organization or anything, so we don't know for sure. But I don't know if anybody's done it with a bow. So, we mentioned it in the magazine a couple times, and nobody stepped forward and said, I've done that with a bow.
Yeah.
So at this point, I still don't know if anybody else but me has ever done it. But, so that's what started it, and I just started going on.
And so at that time, you would have already killed 2 of the color phases.
Yeah,
is that right?
My first bear in '99 was a chocolate.
Okay.
In northwest Minnesota. And then I'd killed several blacks, do-it-yourself hunts mostly.
Yeah.
And being with Bear Hunting Magazine gave me an avenue to go to because outfitters will call Bear Hunting Magazine and say, they're looking for free publicity. They're saying, come hunt with me and write a story about it,
Yeah.
And so it gave me an outlet to choose good areas to go to try to find color-phased bears.
Yeah.
And I went to Idaho, and in British Columbia had a really close call. I could have killed a gorgeous cinnamon bear on the first night of the hunt, and it was 60 yards away, and there was a stream that was swollen by snow melt, and we couldn't get any closer. And my guide just was like, that is a gorgeous bear. It's to this day, it's the most beautiful red cinnamon I'd ever seen. And he wanted me to take my rifle and shoot that bear because he knew how good a publicity it would be for him. And I'm just like, I'm committed to doing this with a bow, and it's my first day. Well, I ended up on that hunt shooting the 42nd bear I saw, and it was a black one. But it was a great hunt with Eureka Peak Outfitters. Well, so it went like that quite a bit. I went on a lot of hunts and had some close calls. I ended up getting a cinnamon bear in 2014 with Thunder Mountain Outfitters in Saskatchewan. They're near south of La Ronge, Saskatchewan. So then I had the cinnamon. Well, then the interest in this really started to ramp up, and I started thinking, this is getting a fair amount of publicity. There might be somebody else out there that's got 3 of them that's going to try to beat me to the punch here. So now I'm really kind of ramping it up. I'm doing like 3 hunts a year. Had a couple more close calls. Had a blonde bear in front of me in Manitoba with Tom Ainsworth.
Yeah.
And the bear just did not give me a shot, and he just walked away. And I'm like, well, it's the first day of a 6-day hunt. I'm going to see this bear again. Well, the 3rd day, this bear came back, and he came in directly downwind, and he didn't even get to the barrel when he smelled us, and he just turned and left. And so that was a close call with a nice blonde bear. Then a couple other times that we had blondes on camera that just we couldn't close the deal. And then in 2018, I hunted. Tom sold the business to Todd at Baldy Mountain Outfitters. Now Todd Wolgemuth owns it, and he runs it as Baldy Mountain Outfitters. And he runs ads in Bear Hunting Magazine all the time. So if you want to contact him, it's very easy to do. And he's done a really good job with it. And it's an excellent area to hunt. Yeah. So Todd basically he kind of took over the reins and said, I'm going to figure out how to get Bernie a blonde bear,
Yeah.
Well, in 2018, I booked a trip the 1st of May. Well, it was a late spring, and the lakes are still frozen up, and there was some snow still in the bush, and the hunting was bad. I mean, a lot of the bears that were just starting to come out of their dens, and they weren't feeding much. So I'm just like, I'm just going to have to kill a representative bear and get a story out of this. Well, it's like the 3rd day. We're in the cabin in the morning, and Todd just bursts in. He's got an SD card, and he says, stick this in your laptop. And sure enough, he's got a blonde bear on a bait. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. So I know where I'm going to spend the rest of my week.
Yeah.
Well, so I went out there, and it's just one of those kind of nightmare deals where the blonde bear was a kind of 150, 160-pound female, and there's other bears around that were just harassing her because the rut's getting, is just starting to smell good, I guess is the way to put it. Yeah. And she's being chased all over the place. And the first day she was there off and on for an hour and never got a shot. And when she would come in, she's so nervous that she would just lay down, take a few bites of the bait, and I would draw my bow, try to get a shot, and I drew my bow 4 times on her. And by the end of that night, when I didn't get that bear, I was not in a great frame of mind. You know, I'm usually pretty calm, and I've shot a lot of bears with a bow, so you would think that, you know, if there's such a thing as buck fever, I was, my decision-making ability was going downhill, I guess. That's the way I like to put it, okay?
Yeah.
So the next day, the same thing happened again. She came in, and I drew on her, and I almost shot, and then she bolted out of there. And I'm just like, you know, I'm really getting frustrated and starting to panic, really, because I'm thinking, here, all these years I've been trying to get a blonde. I got one right in front of me, and I can't get a shot. So she came back, and the same thing happened, and I just got in a situation where I just rushed the shot, and I just really blew it, hit the bear high in the shoulder blade, and it got pretty good penetration. We had a pretty good blood trail, and we followed the blood trail that afternoon and to a point where it just disappeared. And I've never seen a blood trail that good just stop. Todd and I were literally looking in the trees around us trying to figure out if she went up a tree or something. It's like you lifted her out of there with a helicopter.
Wow.
And so we came back the next morning with everybody in camp came out to try to help me find this bear, you know, and we never did find it. And just, I mean, it was the lowest point in my hunting career. So when in the first week
of bad feeling, isn't it?
It is. There's nothing like
especially
it. I'll tell you what.
You're trying to do something what you're like what you're trying to do, and had this very specific goal.
Yeah,
that's hard to find, because that's the point of what you're saying here, is that it's hard to target a blonde bear.
Yeah, I mean, probably less than 2% of bears are blonde. You know, when you think about it.
Probably less than that.
Yeah.
Really, if you're talking about the total bear population in North America.
Yeah.
Now, maybe up in that certain region, maybe 1% of them would be blonde. But yeah.
Well, so I had a trip booked the first week in June to go to northern Saskatchewan, which would have been a month after this trip. And interestingly, I had met Mark Belchamber. He's with Big Spruce Outfitting at a sports show in Minneapolis. And I just noticed that on his banner behind his booth, he had a bunch of pictures of people with bears, and one of them was blonde. So I stopped and talked to him a little bit. And he opened up his photo album, and I'm like, "You got quite a few blonde bears in this photo album. I go, you got blonde bears?" And he goes, "Yeah." And so I got to talking to him, and he became pretty convinced right away that he was going to book me. I mean, so we kind of talked for about a year, back and forth. He started texting me pictures of blonde bears, and the next year at the same show, then I really talked to him, and I said, "Okay, you know, let's get serious about this." And he says, "I want to get Saskatchewan tourism involved, because they have a lot of thank you. They have a lot of interest in bringing bear hunters through Saskatchewan tourism." So he says, "I want to get them involved, so if you get a blonde bear, they can benefit from the publicity." So they paid for my flight and everything to get up there.
Yeah.
Well, so I end up going to. This is an elite hunt, really, because it's way the heck up there. It's right just south of the border of Northwest Territories.
Yeah.
And you know, I drove to Saskatoon, but then flew from there, and they stop at a couple of small communities. This little plane, it's one of these planes where every seat's a window seat, you know.
Yeah.
And I think there's 8 people on it. And then we landed a landing strip of a uranium mining company. There's not even a town there. It's just a uranium mining company owns a landing strip. And from there, he's got these little Suzuki Samurai truck things. You know what they look like? And they have he's got a lift kit in them and stuff like that. And it's a 22-mile ride, like a four-wheeler ride in one of those, out to where you get in a boat, and then you boat out to his camp on an island. So it's quite an endeavor to get there. Well, when I landed at this landing strip, float plane comes up and lands right there, and there's 4 other people standing out on the dock. And I walk down there and I say, "You guys bear hunting?" They're like, "Yeah, we're going out to hunt at Big Spruce Outfitting with Mark." I'm like, "Oh yeah, he's supposed to be coming to get me in this Samurai thing." And they're like, "Oh, if you're going out there with them, why don't you just jump in with us and ride in a float plane? It'll take you 15 minutes instead of 2.5 hours." I'm like, "I'm all over that, you know."
Yeah.
So, and one of the guys was formerly played. He's a lineman for the Minnesota Vikings, and just a big mountain of a guy. And he was, really
he's
fun.
from the same state as you.
Yeah,
Minnesota.
Yeah, and actually all of them were from Minnesota.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so anyway, we get out there, and I was really, really concerned about his style of baiting because it's so hard to get out there that it's very difficult to get bait to these bears.
Yeah, it's a logistical issue.
Yeah, well, so he feeds like a coffee can of oats and dog food a day. And that's all he feeds. And I'm like, man, these bears got to be really irregular. And he says, I believe what happens because there's just really nothing else for these bears to eat in the spring up there. They might find a dead caribou or moose or something like that. But other than that, there's nothing. There's no grass, clover, nothing for them to feed on. It's all moss.
Yeah.
And so he says what happens is the more bigger, mature, aggressive males tend to just kind of take over the bait sites. And then when you bait, usually they show up within, he said, we bait every day, and they usually show up within a couple hours. So I'm like, okay, well, I guess we'll see if this works or not. Well, he goes and he kind of splits up the hunters among the guides, and the plan for the morning was we're going to go check going to go run the baits, check the cameras, and then we're going to come back and do some fishing and have a shore lunch, and then after shore lunch we'll sit down and decide how, who's going to hunt where and stuff like that, and we'll spend the rest of our afternoon hunting. So we go out there. Well, we're going to check 3 baits. Well, we pull up to the second one, and he pulls a card out of the trail camera and sticks it in his viewer, and he's like, oh, there's a blonde bear here. And I look at the picture, and it's a little, like 150-pound female, and I really want to shoot a blonde bear, but I really want it to be something I can really be proud of,
Right.
So I'm kind of tossed between do I really shoot a 150-pound female if she comes in. Then he keeps scrolling through the pictures, and he goes, oh, there's a bigger one here. And I said,
So there
well,
were 2 blonde bears.
There's 2 blonde bears on this bait. And I'm like, hey, when was he here? So he's going through the picture, and he goes, oh, he was just here. And I said, forget shore lunch. Can I start hunting right now?
And he wasn't he like 8 minutes? Wasn't it like 8 minutes?
It was like 8 minutes before.
So, I mean, it wasn't like he was here like yesterday or even
he
that
had,
morning.
Y'all
ran him off the bait,
yeah,
basically.
He probably had come in to check the bait and just before we pulled up.
So he was close.
And matter of fact, that after I shot the bear, I'll get ahead of myself a little bit. When we followed
you just told him you shot the bear.
Oh, yeah. But when we followed the blood trail, it went right to a bed that was 35 yards
He may have been sitting there
from
watching
the barrel.
now.
So I think Mark's theory that the bigger male bears just kind of take over a bait, that bear just basically lived there. So anyway, I got to get back to where I was at here. So he says, yeah, you can hunt right now. So I go down to the boat. I grab my my bow and my backpack and cameras and all this stuff, and I haul a big load of stuff up there to a ground blind. And you have to realize that far north, there's very few trees that are big enough that you can put a tree stand in.
Those trees are under 6 inches at the base.
Exactly. So basically what they've done is put a pile of brush up there and set a chair behind it, and that's where you're going to hunt from. Well, I got settled in there kind of, and I started digging through my stuff, and I pulled my covert scouting camera out of my backpack, and I like to put them on video and go attach them to a tree right by the bait in hopes of getting a second angle when I'm trying to video. So I walk up to the bait, and I'm standing there going, let's see which tree is good. And all of a sudden I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, and I look over, and here is that big blonde bear, and he's 15 yards away, and he's just walking at me like I'm not even right there. Wow. So I'm just like gasped. I back up. I'm just backpedaling right into the blind.
Now, is your bow up here at this point?
My bow is still in the case in the
boat.
In the blind.
In the blind. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So at that point, I was just like, I got to get a hold of Mark because he's down in the blind looking for a boat cushion for me to sit on this chair, So I hollered down at him. I said, the bear is here. And he's like, what? He's yelling. I'm like, jeez. Yeah. And the bear stopped, looks at him, then looks back at me. And he looks at the ground there where the oats are, And he's just kind of eyeballing me. And so eventually he just walks right up to the bait. And then I'm digging through my backpack. And when I was in the airport in Saskatoon, they had dumped my backpack. They had pulled everything out of my backpack, and then they just threw it all back in there. Well, my plan was before I go out to the tree stand, I was going to go through and organize it all. Well, that all went out the window. So I'm sitting there. I cannot find my release. And I finally found my release. I got the camera on the tripod, got it rolling and everything like that. And I looked over, and here's Mark. He had walked part way up from the boat, and he's videoing this bear with his phone. And so I just knocked an arrow, and I looked, and the bear's broadside. I can see his ribs perfectly. So that was that.
It's time. Yeah.
And 8 years of trying to get a blonde bear, and I got one in the first 5 minutes of the hunt. I never sat down.
Wow.
It's just crazy.
And what was neat about it is that a lot of color-faced bears that people kill seem to be younger bears. I mean, to be honest, that's probably the biggest true bleach blonde bear that I've seen. I mean, all the other ones I've seen have been lesser bears, and I don't really understand that completely, because I guess it's just such a small segment of the population. Just not as many of them make it to maturity.
Yeah.
And not as many of them that make it to maturity, are going to be in places where we're hunting. I mean, so it's just
well, I agree with that, and also in the outfitters that have blonde bears and people, they're more likely to shoot a bear if it's a color, even when it's a little smaller, just because they, just not as many of them get to be mature like this one does. But this is a big old mature male.
Well, and in this part of the world where you're hunting, very little hunting pressure. I mean, like the way Bernie described how that bear acted. For somebody that's not baited bears, if you did that in Minnesota or did it in Arkansas, that wouldn't have happened. I mean, that bear wouldn't have.
That bear had never seen a human being before. No doubt in my mind. He didn't know what a person was.
Yeah.
He looked at me like, it's moving, but what is that?
Yeah. That's kind of the disorienting thing about hunting these true wilderness bears that just have not interacted with people, is that they have no respect for you. I mean,
you're curious more than anything about you, but they tend to look at something that moves as that might be something to eat.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. And it's kind of unnerving, but that's the beauty of hunting northern Saskatchewan, like where you were in these really. I would consider what you did there with Mark like an adventure bear hunt.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, flying in a float plane, getting that far north. I mean, the wildest, the furthest that I have ever been from civilization has been in northern Saskatchewan.
Yeah.
Even more so than Alaska.
And you're hunting with basically the next outfitter over from where I'm hunting, and they're 150 miles apart.
Yeah.
That's how much. The nearest town to where we were is Wollaston Lake, which is over 100 miles.
Yeah. I'll be darned.
So.
Well, that's some spectacular country, and it's spectacular, not like the Rocky Mountains are spectacular. It's spectacular because of just how wild and remote it is. All that, I don't know what the name of that moss is, but that like reindeer moss.
Yeah.
It's just it almost, when you're hunting up there, it feels like you're hunting on a different planet.
Yeah.
Trees are small. It's the boreal forest. The Canadian Shield is a strip of granite that goes across like all of northern Canada. And once you hit that, like, this is the way I understand the geography of Canada. Southern Canada is like farm ground, rich soils, and there's a lot of agriculture. And then when you get to about to the middle part of the provinces, you run into that Canadian Shield, which is granite outcropping. So you see a lot of
all their topsoil got pushed by glaciers down into southern Canada. That's what happened.
Well, that's probably right. Yeah, the glaciers scraped, and so anyway, the boreal forest. I'm just kind of talking about the topography of it, but you have these jack pines and spruce that are at most 6 inches at the base, and it's the only things up there in northern Saskatchewan is going to be. Well, black bear would probably be the most plentiful animal up there. There's black bear, moose, wolf, and the odd caribou. That would be the only big game animals really up there.
Yeah.
There's no white-tailed deer. There's no
beavers. That's what blew me away.
Really? Now, see, I didn't know that.
That lake has no beavers on it. And I said, I can't believe there's no beavers up. And he says, what are they going to eat? There's no willows or anything like that to speak of. There's nothing for beavers to eat. So, usually when you're in Canada, every lake has beavers in it, but they're not there because And plus, the winters are so long that they get 4 feet of ice, and a beaver lodge built on a shoreline or in a swamp or something like that, it's going to freeze to the bottom, so they can't come out of there.
I think you could say that wherever a beaver couldn't live, a human probably shouldn't live. That's
about
why
right.
There's no major cities in northern Canada.
I loved it up there, but I like it in the summer.
Yeah, they have some spectacular summers. Well, hey, this blonde bear that you took completed the Color Phase Grand Slam.
Right.
And you are, I guess it could be, you're the first guy to do it that's done it inside of media and documented.
Right, and with a bow, yeah.
And with a bow. And so it's just kind of a fun angle to look at bear hunting, because a lot of guys would kill a bear and be like, well, I've killed a bear, I don't want to go bear hunting again. This kind of gives a new venue to look at it. So, even if a guy didn't set out to do the Color Phase Grand Slam, maybe he would just be like, hey, I'd like to kill a blonde bear.
Yeah.
Maybe that's his goal. And it kind of is fun when you do it like that. But you can watch the video of your hunt on your
Bow Hunting Road. If you go to YouTube and search for Bow Hunting Road, you'll come up with my YouTube
Bow
channel.
Hunting Road. So
Right.
type that in YouTube. You can see the moose video. You can see the bear in the den video. And what's the Color Phase bear video called?
It's called something to do with Grand Slam. I guess I don't remember exactly what I call it. Color Phase Grand Slam.
Yeah. It has the word blonde in it somewhere, I think.
Yeah, it probably does, yeah. Well, I did 2 videos. One, I just did the video of the hunt where I took the blonde bear, and then I did another longer video. It's like a 30-minute video where I walked people through each of the 4 and showed footage from each of the 4 different bears that I shot. So there's 2 different ones on there.
Yeah. Well, that's really neat. And
I would just encourage people to go do it. It's a challenge, and even if you aren't going to do the Grand Slam, just go try to shoot a Color Phase bear, or just continue to bear hunt and challenge yourself through bear hunting. There, you got Color Phase bears. Another kind of a milestone is a Boone and Crockett bear. Another milestone might be a 500-pound bear. Everybody talks about deer like I always wanted to shoot a 150 or want to shoot a 170 or a 10-pointer or whatever. Bear hunting has that too if you just look for what the challenges are and challenge yourself to go do it, and don't be afraid to try something really new and difficult. And it's like Donnie Vincent said in one of his videos. He said, if you want to experience fantastic things, you have to put yourself in fantastic places, and you can really do that with bear hunting.
Yeah, for sure. Well, hey, thanks for being on the Bear Hunting Magazine podcast. I'm sure we'll do this again. You can read Bernie's column every month or every other month in our magazine. He writes a bow hunting column. And, check out Bear Hunting Magazine. We're the big fish in the small pond, only bear hunting magazine in the world. Did you know we've been in print for 20 years this year?
Oh, that's cool.
Yep. This is Bear Hunting Magazine.
I think I must have wrote for about the first issue.
Year. Did you really write?
2000 was the first year I wrote an article for him.
Well, that's when it started.
Yeah.
Okay.
Cool.
So you've probably been in there every year since then, probably.
Just about.
Yeah. Well, no, 20th year Bear Hunting Magazine. So check out our print magazine. And I keep trying to tell people that have never actually picked up the magazine. It's a nice magazine.
It is.
And I'm
quality paper and everything.
Bernie. I may be a little biased, but good quality paper, good quality just content. And we work like crazy to really bring the best bear hunting content in the world to people. Yeah. And I think we're doing it.
Well, nobody else is doing anything like it. You're the best because you're just about the only one.
Hey man, I'd rather be that than rather be lucky than good.
Hey everybody, listen up! I got mega huge news. Meat Eater Live is heading back out on the road. That's right. Join me and the crew. Clay Newcomb, Cal, Yanni, Spencer's going to be there. Phil the engineer's going to be there. Meat Eater Live headed back out. Now, when you get every ticket, okay? Every ticket you buy, you get a signed copy of our new Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook. This tour is celebrating the release of the book. Buy a ticket, get a signed copy, Meat Eater Outdoor Cookbook, wild game recipes for the grill, smoker, camp stove, and campfire, which I'll point out is a $38 value. Here's where we're going to go. April 23rd, the Mesa Art Center in Mesa, Arizona. April 24th, the Balboa Theater in San Diego. April 25, the Grove in Anaheim, California. April 27, the Crest Theater in Sacramento. April 29, the Union in Salt Lake City. April 30, the Egyptian in Boise. May 1, the Wilma Theater in Missoula. May 2, the Bing Crosby Theater in Spokane, Washington. May 4, Revolution Hall in Portland, Oregon. And May 5, the last day of the tour, Pantages Theater in Tacoma, Washington. For tickets and more information, visit the events page at themeateater.com. Hope to see you at the show.